The PRovoke Podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PRovoke Media podcast. I'm Maya Pawinska-Sims, the EMEA editor of PRovoke, and I'm joined today by two brilliant guests from the agency and brand side to talk about how brands can use the power of earned media to build consumer love and loyalty, even in challenging times. First of all, we have Kate Gibson, who's Managing Director of Consumer at Cirkle. And we have Jim Shearer, the Marketing Director of one of Circle's clients, Birdseye, on the call as well. Kate, Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So tell me, I'll kick off with you, Kate. How long have Circle and Birdseye been working together, and what for you really works about this relationship?
So we first pitched for the Birdseye business on consumer and B2B almost 6 years ago now. And that was a very competitive pitch at the time. And when we won the work, there was probably quite a bit of disillusionment internally at Birdseye about PR and earned media and what it could achieve. I think they historically had their fingers burnt. It wasn't quite worked out in the way that they had hoped. And what's been really great about the journey is we've built up over a period of years some really strong levels of confidence in the power of earned media, and it plays a really central role in everything that we deliver on behalf of the marketing team there now. So we're really proud of the place we've got to, and I think the relationship is particularly strong because culturally we're very similar as two businesses. Our teams work really closely together, and there's huge amounts of collaboration and trust and transparency that goes with that as well. So we have a very open-minded marketing team that we're working with that are think very consumer first. They're very insight led, and they enable us to do our best creative work and be really brave and bold in the campaigns that we put out.
Jim, from the in-house point of view, would you agree with that?
I would wholeheartedly. I've been with Birdseye now for just over a year, so can't speak to all the history, but in my experience of working with big iconic brands like Birdseye, one of the criticisms I'd have of agencies is that they often err on the side of caution when it comes to their responses and particularly their creative responses. That's not the case with Circle, and I think of all of the agencies since I've come into the business, they've been the one that have genuinely and consistently pushed us actually to be braver, be bolder in the work and the briefs that we've put forward, and I really appreciate that.
Fantastic. So, Jim, in your year in the job, what's the campaigns you've worked on together that so far that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'd pick one. I'm going to let Kate speak to everyone's favourite, which is the captain, because I'd like her to have the spotlight for the fantastic work they did there. But my personal favourite actually was something called the Green Paper for our Green Cuisine brand from Birdseye. So just to give you a short summary of what that was a piece of research into the eating habits of children in an attempt to unearth some new and interesting insights about the way they think about food, their approach to it, and kind of delightfully what they think of the way their parents treat them when it comes to dinner times and the choices that obviously their parents make on their behalf. And I think it was really illuminating to see a different generation's approach to what they put in their bodies and their consciousness around eating well for themselves and for the planet as well. And I really liked that because it was a small idea that showed genuine desire to go and have empathy with our consumers, but starting small and thinking big is something I really believe in, and that piece of work got as big as delivering the report to the government to land what we thought was some really important messages about the importance of plant-based food for the future. So that's kind of my personal favorite, albeit maybe not the biggest piece of work that we've done.
Thanks, Jim. Let's put the spotlight back on Kate then. Talk to us about Captain Birdseye. What an iconic brand figure that is.
and such an easy conversation to have. I think the captain has been an absolute gift for us. And I'm not sure if you saw that the grocer named Captain Birdseye the most iconic TV ad character last year. So we have had the privilege of relaunching and moving away from the grandfatherly figure to a much younger model. And it's had an incredible halo effect on the Birdseye master brand over the last few years. And we've had fantastic permission and bravery from the marketing team at Birdseye to kind of really get brave with this. So we've had some fantastic fun campaigns like the Captain's Calendar for Christmas, which was a sellout. We launched an aftershave range called Ahoy, which featured on Have I Got News for You and BBC Breakfast, and we had it trending on Twitter. And then more recently, just in the last few months, we've launched the Captain on TikTok, and people for the very first time are starting to see the Captain from the neck down, because he launched his new sustainable range of swimwear called All Aboard Shorts. So we've had way too much fun, and they're just a few examples of the work we've done with the Captain, but there's lots of other work besides going on across the Birdseye portfolio, which we're really proud of.
I remember when you relaunched Hot Captain Birdseye, and everyone was like, "That's genius!" It's like such a clever idea. Yeah, Captain Birdseye and swimwear. Whoever thought that was going to happen when we were all kids? Kate, Cirkle recently published its Power of Earned Media report, which I've had a look through. Why did you do this study in the first place, and what were you looking for?
It's against the backdrop of financial difficulty that I think we're all in at the moment, and we see and hear it everywhere. It's a very challenging time to kind of work through, and building trust and maintaining market share is becoming increasingly hard for brands when inflation is forcing prices up, and we're looking at to consumers to make really much harder decisions, I guess, about how they spend the money they have, and no question that's had a really significant impact on their behaviour. So we launched the study to try and understand what consumers' motivations were, what they need from brands these days, and how earned media can play a big role in driving brand love for the long term. And we particularly focused on parents. And in the case of Birdseye and many of our other clients, they're a really key target audience for us. So that's the audience that we did the deep dive on, and got some really interesting results, some which are a real wake-up call, I think, for brands. But the report showed that 1 in 3 of parents say that brands have lost their grip on day-to-day realities that families face, and actually half don't feel that brands understand their financial difficulties at all. So there's some real kind of disengagement from consumers with brands that aren't talking to them on the right level. But if we can harness those needs and understand them fully, brands have a real opportunity to drive brand love for the long term.
Were you surprised by those findings, the strength of those findings and views and feelings from consumers?
I think I'm surprised at how much it switched, I think, from the things that consumers look to brands for and found interesting to what they want these days. I'm surprised at how high the figure is about brands that don't understand the financial realities of those consumers. And Birdseye's been doing some really interesting work in that space to try and demonstrate their closeness to consumers and their understanding of what they're going through.
So tell me a bit about that. How are Birdseye with Cirkle using the insights from your report to understand what consumers really want now from brands in as you said, a huge cost of living crisis that shows no sign of abating?
I think I should probably hand over to the Jim on that one, because they've got some interesting insights work they're doing at their side internally to help get close to consumers on that one.
Yeah, sure. I think the report was a great read. I was a little less surprised actually at the kind of strength of reaction from consumers, because I think in recent years it's become more evident than ever that consumers really see brands as institutions, and I think there's a general and increasing level of cynicism and criticism of institutions from consumers and how well they listen, empathize and meet their needs. And for me, it's kind of a bit of a welcome shift actually, because it's a bit like going back to the future with consumers' relationships with brands, where they need to earn their stripes by being of genuine utility and usefulness to consumers, rather than simply an idea that exists in their mind, which obviously is at the heart of what being a brand is all about. But it shouldn't be forgotten that we're here for a reason, and that's to provide a service or a product that is of genuine use. So I kind of welcome that criticism, and yes, we've been trying to respond, I think, to the quite dramatic shift in the lives of our consumers, in the way that we organize our understanding of them, but particularly around the cost of living impact. And so just to give an example, the data we collect now about shopper behavior and consumer behavior is organized by our understanding of the things that they will do more of and the things they'll do less of, and where we might see exits from our particular category, so frozen food, and where actually we might see a benefit. So we much more closely track, for example, out of home consumption, on the hypothesis that people will eat out less and actually eat more in the home. And from that insight that we're gathering, we're refining propositions. So fake away, as an example, using our portfolio in pizza and in chicken shop products, we've really sharpened up the communication of how that is a valuable offering when you put it relative to eating out of home. So I'd say it's had the cost of living crisis had quite a fundamental impact on the way we try and understand our consumers, and actually I think created a bigger interest in the wider organization, because it's hurting businesses where it really hurts boardrooms, and that's in our sales and our profit. And the only answer to recovering those things is with the consumer and understanding them better.
So how do you build brand love and long-term brand loyalty in this environment where consumers are trading down to own label, maybe to make savings, or refining their shop to save money? How do you actually kind of continue to build brand love in that kind of environment?
Yeah, well, fortunately, Birds Eye is in a relatively strong position, because if you think about a crisis like how people are going through with the cost of living crisis, the winners that emerge are yes, the businesses that have got good economics and a strong balance sheet, but it will be the brands that are the strongest that emerge the winner. And I think brands that have got a great baseline of trust, reassurance, are kind of starting from a good position, and Birds Eye is one of those brands. It's a generational brand, so you couldn't trust a brand anymore that you yourself were fed as a child from your parents. So it's got a good starting point, but there's a few things that I guess we're doubling down on. One would be the superiority that we have, and particularly the superiority in our products relative to own label. It's not a coincidence that a brand like Birds Eye emerged as a big number one brand and stayed there, because it comes down to the relative quality of its product compared to others, and we need to protect that and not twitch at the circumstances and rip quality out to try and create a cheaper price for our shoppers. So that would be one thing, and that kind of leads me on to the other point. We are very, very focused on not being cheap, but offering great value. So a core part of our proposition, and that of the category actually of frozen food, is yes, it's really nutritious, it's tasty, it's convenient, it's sustainable, but it's affordable, particularly relative to other temperature states. So we need to continue to understand how we create value that's valued from the shopper. And personally, I feel that's an obligation that I have. We're a number one brand within a really important category to support families through the cost of living crisis. So we are finding new and innovative ways to make our brands accessible from a price point perspective, promotions that offer value beyond the price of the product itself. So, you can call them giveaways or prize draws or whatever you want to call them, but really focused on their context. So I think a nice example of this is for Asda shoppers, we ran a promotion where with every purchase of every Birdseye product, you could redeem a family activity effectively, because we know that one of the first things that gets sacrificed is quality time together as a family outside the home when money's tight. So things like that are really key, and offering value beyond price, as well as finding creative ways to make our price points accessible.
I guess I'm just thinking aloud, but I guess there's a thing around language here as well, isn't it? Because you don't want to wholesale change tone and brand personality, but you have to make it clear you're there to support your consumers and families without being patronizing at the same time. How do you get the balance right between, you maybe can't be as tongue-in-cheek as you might be if times weren't quite so tight? How do you get the balance right there?
Yeah, well, it's difficult actually, and it's a topic that we quite constantly talk about, because you're right. So we can sit here as a brand and as a business, and preach for the benefits of not buying our own label, and choose the quality and the reassurance of Birdseye, but that can appear to be, and would be actually in many cases, a really blinkered, naive approach, because you know what, for some families they don't have a choice. They'd love to have the choice between Birdseye and own label, but the financial constraints in their family means actually they don't have a choice. So you've got to walk that line really, really carefully, and sensitively. And I mean, the absolute worst thing we could do as a brand is make a mother feel guilty for feeding her children a lower quality product. And that's ultimately the risk. So we need to be aware of that and step through it. And I think, but meanwhile, try and do our jobs to sell more Birdseye products. So I'll give you an example of a line that I think sums it up quite nicely for me that we use, which is, Birdseye are products that your family will like rather than hope they will like. Because the risk of taking away a familiar and family favourite is that it gets left uneaten. So I think trying to choose sensitive language to land the point that I guess commercially that we need to make to continue to have the brand be healthy is something that's a constant line. But the most important thing is that you're aware of it.
Absolutely. Kate, did you want to add anything to Jim's points about building brand love and loyalty in this kind of environment?
I think Jim summarised it really, really well. It's been kind of the biggest focus for the business, doing things in the right way, and as Jim says, stepping through it, and being careful about how we show up for consumers. I think we are in a relatively privileged position where we have already huge, great legacy, generational brand, as Jim said, and a lot of brand love out there already, but we have to continually innovate with our products, but also the way that we're making the products accessible for consumers to continue that success. I think it's also worth saying as well that obviously there's, all of these organizations have short-term commercial goals, and that's one thing, and it's sort of balancing up the short-term gains versus building brand loyalty for the long term as well, which is a much longer game, but the one where ultimately companies will really win.
Okay, and Kate, I'm just going to stick with you here, because we're seeing plenty of evidence that over the years advertising budgets are going down as brands and organizations look at where they're going to get the most bang for their buck, because everybody is having a tough time, corporates down to individuals at the moment. Are you seeing the focus on earned media and spend on earned media and consideration for the power of earned media go up among your clients?
Yes, we definitely are. So of course, there's a trend for decreasing above the line spend across the board, I would say. The more progressive brands and clients within our portfolio are investing more into earned media and social media. And we run both for a number of those clients. I think clients are becoming increasingly aware, or at least have the appetite to understand more about earned media and what what it can deliver for consumers in terms of connection and brand loyalty. But that's a journey that we continually going on with clients, and their level of understanding and sophistication obviously vary wildly from client to client. And Birdseye is a great example of where that's worked really well. TV, and I'm sure Jim will expand on this, continues to be a really important channel for Birdseye, and they invest heavily in that area, and it delivers really well for them. But where earned media can really stand out is the flexibility that it gives us to adapt to conversation and consumer needs in a way that paid media can't, because it's much more rigid, quite understandably, in its execution.
Jim, do you want to expand a little bit more on how you've kind of shifted your marketing approach, or the balance of your marketing portfolio to focus on earned, and what results are you seeing from kind of taking this new approach?
Yeah, I mean, the balance is exactly the right word. So we moved from we talk about reach with relevance as our communication strategy, where reach is communication and media channel choices that just are purely very metric driven. So we and TV being the obvious example of that. So we've moved from a model where we were 90-10 as a ratio between pure reach channels and other to 60-40, and we did that in the last 12 months, and we're seeing some fantastic results. And it's the reason we did it is for all the reasons that Kate mentioned. And I think just the one that I'll add to that actually is, we talked earlier around the kind of cynicism and criticism that Kate's and Circle's report unearthed that is out there with consumers towards brands. Well, is that any surprise when many brands are just firing and hammering kind of reach-led communication media towards them, whereas actually you can walk the walk, not just talk the talk as a brand. And I think that brings with it much more credibility, and earned media is your chance to show the world that you do what you say. It's kind of that old adage, isn't it? It's, don't tell me you're funny, tell me a joke. Earned media is the opportunity to prove yourself, your values in the real world, directly to consumers. You can prove that through listening to them and engaging, immediately and in an engaging way to what you've heard. And you can prove it, like I said, by walking the walk. So, don't just believe what I say on TV. Here's me actually doing it in the real world. What do you think? And start a two-way conversation with consumers that way.
And I'm interested in this. We talk a lot about brands that live in culture. I mean, and media can move in a much more kind of agile and swift way to make the most of cultural movements and create conversations and join conversations like no other marketing discipline can. How do you at Birdseye and Kate, you at Cirkle, kind of stay informed about what's going on in culture, emerging issues, emerging trends?
I think first and foremost, stories can start anywhere. The media obviously they have social desks. They're pulling stories from social listening. SEO and search behavior drives coverage. Social media commentary travels far and wide now, and we've really kind of adapted the way that we work as an agency and as a team to deliver against that. So our team is now structured at Circle in a way which is run by our creative strategy director. And we have a story first approach. So we think about the stories that we want to tell and then the channels that we want to use to tell it. And that team is made up of earned, owned and SEO specialists who have a really deep understanding of the audiences we're trying to target. And they use those insights to find conversations, find stories, which we know are going to resonate with consumers.
And Jim, what's the story at Birdseye around kind of staying really connected to what's going on in culture?
Well, obviously working with agencies like Circle, who have kind of operationalized listening and done that with a kind of like a forensic eye on detail and opportunity assessment and the pace that you travel through listening, identifying a trend that could become part of culture and relevant to your brand, yes or no, let's go. So that kind of journey is really impressively organized now and very, very quick. And equally, you can react quickly with the channels that we have available to us now. I'd add a couple of things. One is just a personal belief, which is, for me, the bar for culture is what gets spoken about down the pub. So I still want my teams to be connected into culture and form a point of view themselves. So I talk to them about marketeers having, a very varied diet. What's the diet of a marketeer? How are they absorbing culture in different ways? I think it's a danger if we just start to rely on tools that scrape conversations, aggregate them, codify them, and turn them into a opportunity. There's still an intuition and a touch and a feel that comes with creating great marketing work. It's a belief of mine. And the bar for me would still be, are you going to create something that would get talked about down the pub equally from that insight? So there's an expectation of my marketing teams that they have their finger on the pulse and the zeitgeist, and they need to collect information from a variety of sources to do that. The other thing that I think is key is that a wide cross section of the business, across the business and up and down the business, have got a closeness with consumers that helps big decisions be made. Because ultimately, if you're going to unearth a cultural insight that turns into a brand opportunity, that's big. There's an approval and a decision-making process that takes that into other parts of the business. And they'll need to understand it too and feel a connection with it. So we run a consumer closeness program that puts, for example, our executive board directly into the homes of consumers, an ethnographic kind of approach, and spending time with consumers to really try and empathize with them rather than just sympathize with them. And I think that's important because, like it or not, there's a truth about many organizations where the more senior you are, the further away you get from the consumer in terms of the way you live your own life, and need to try and remove some of those biases and lack of diversity that exist that could prevent good decisions being made around how we support our consumers.
Fantastic. So I love the way that the big picture it's not something that can be solved by an algorithm, is it? That humanity, that empathy, Birdseye's known for having humor as well as kind of deep consumer understanding, particularly for the family audience, and bringing that all together to create a successful, engaging campaign means that it feels more human because it's human at its heart as well, I guess. Yeah,
it's come from a human, exactly. Yeah.
Building on Jim's point around, I think internal stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical in this as well. And where we're seeing the most success, and Birdseye kind of being the best example of that, is the way that our clients are structuring themselves internally to be able to respond with a story first mentality. And that means being set up to move at real pace in terms of approvals and making sure guardrails are in place, and there's a real level of education and understanding on the client side about what earned media is trying to deliver, and making sure that's all in place before we unearth these fantastic stories, because once they come out, we need to move very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for this partnership? Can you give us a little sneak peek of campaigns you've got coming up, Kate?
Probably a few. I'll try not to get my knuckles wrapped by Jim too much. Of course, the captain's going to make more appearances this year. We've had some very big, splashy, exciting moments with him ever since the hot captain was revealed a few years ago. But they're relatively rare moments in the calendar. So we're looking at how we can find a role for him that he can play in the everyday. And that's sort of a proposition that we're looking at with Birdseye at the moment. And I'm not sure if you want to reveal anything else, Jim, that's coming up.
I can, yeah, in the near term. I mean, not in any detail. I'm sure the listeners won't thank me for spending half an hour talking about them, but we're absolutely got a moment that we're very focused on. Is relevant to the cost of living kind of discussion that we had around back to school. So it's a particularly stressful time for parents when organized chaos of summer holidays just turns into chaos in the home, and being able to your reliance on super convenient food hacks, great value, and something the kids will love and fill their tummies as well, actually, after a day at school is right. It's the epitome of that moment. So we've got some lovely plans around how we make that moment for parents a lot easier, that Kate and Cirkle and the team are working on. We're also going to be focusing in the near term a lot around sustainability. So, the story there is that 100% of all of the fish that we buy is certified by the Marine Council. That's not true for a lot of products that you can buy, and we're proud that we make it easy for consumers to make a choice they want to make but don't always feel they can, by choosing bird's eye fish. So we want to tell that story in an impactful way in the autumn time, because there is a fear that amongst other priorities, the ongoing importance of sustainability and practices kind of gets lost. So we need to keep that ticking over as well.
There's a lot for brands to kind of take responsibility for and take on their shoulders these days, isn't there? Do you remain kind of hopeful and enthusiastic about the work you're doing as a brand?
Yes. I say to my team all the time, we do important work. We feed families nutritious, tasty, affordable, and sustainable food. Our purpose in the world is to feed. For Bird's Eye, is to feed the UK a little better every day, and we genuinely connect with that ambition and mean it as well. And without sounding overly dramatic about it, I think the world and Britain need businesses like ours with that purpose now more than ever. So we have to step up. It's important work, and it's the reason that I came to work here, to be completely frank with you, is to be able to make a positive difference in people's lives every day. And I feel kind of fortunate and humbled to have the platform of the Bird's Eye brand to help us achieve that.
Fantastic. What a lovely way to sign off. Jim, thank you so much. Kate, thank you both so much for joining me on the podcast today. I think we'll all be looking out for the next Hot Captain campaigns from Bird's Eye. That great purposeful work you're doing as well. So thank you both so much.
Thanks, Maya.
Thanks, Maya.
You've been listening to the PRovoke podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.